mild to clear, but nowhere near as many showers around. A few may just graze eastern England. There'll be a cold wind blowing on some of these North Sea coasts, but for many, the winds will be light. There'll be quite a bit of winter sunshine, and temperatures will be a little bit higher than today's values, particularly in the southwest, 7-8 degrees Celsius. Most places still, though, turning pretty cold pretty quickly through tomorrow evening. Again, a frost taking hold of the chart. We will see some fog on Friday night, more widely across England and Wales. Meanwhile, further north and west, there's some rain trickling in. That is a sign of a change into the weekend, a dull and damp weekend on the west coast of Scotland. Patchy rain for Northern Ireland and a brisk breeze, but it will be turning milder here. For most of England and Wales, Saturday, again, dry, bright, sunny, and cold, with temperatures, again, only 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. But signs of things turning milder, albeit with the cloud and rain across the northwest. And that will continue into Sunday. The rain being caused by weather fronts edging in, still bringing some damp weather in the northwest on Sunday, but milder air. The colder conditions persist in the southeast.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Levelling Up is back in the news. There are rows about it. But do you know what levelling up actually is? I'm not sure that I do, but maybe Jacob Rees-Mogg can answer that question for us. ULEZ, the extension is coming in at the end of August. There is now an almighty row going on. Is Khan doing the right thing? Even the Prime Minister got involved in this debate yesterday. I'll give you the latest from Tony Blair at Davos, giving us advice on our digitised, dehumanised future. And joining me on Talking Pints, successful football manager and controversialist Ian Holloway. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story on GB News tonight: train companies have increased their offer to RMT rail workers, including a minimum pay rise of 9% over 2 years. The Rail Delivery Group says that's the best and final offer they have in order to prevent more strikes. It's now urging the RMT to put the offer forward to its members for a vote. And as you've been hearing, the Prime Minister has been defending levelling up plans today, arguing that the most deprived areas of the UK will receive most of the government funding. It announced more than £2 billion will be invested in over 100 projects across the UK. But Labour has criticised the plans, saying London and the South East will be the greatest beneficiaries. Mr Sunak insists that won't be the case.
The North West is the top region. So the amount of money per person living there, who came top? North West. Who came second? North East. And actually, if you look down at the other end of the table, you find places like London and the South East. And the difference is huge. So I think the funding that you're all getting per person out of this levelling up fund is twice per capita what London and the South East is getting. And that should give you guys the confidence that when we talk about delivering levelling up and spreading opportunity across the country, that we really mean it.
Rishi Sunak. Well, in other news today, 2 retired Metropolitan Police officers have been charged with child sex offences as part of an investigation into a serving Met Chief Inspector who's been found dead. 63-year-old Jack Addis from Perthshire and 62-year-old Jeremy Laxton from Lincolnshire will both appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on February the 9th. The Met says the charges follow a lengthy and complex investigation into Richard Watkinson, the 49-year-old who was found dead in Buckinghamshire last Thursday, on the day he was also due to be charged. The actor Alec Baldwin will be charged with involuntary manslaughter over the fatal shooting on the set of the film Rust. Cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed during rehearsals in the US state of New Mexico when a prop gun that Baldwin was using fired off a live round. Mr. Baldwin's lawyer has called the ruling a terrible miscarriage of justice. And lastly, the King has requested the profits from a £1 billion a year wind farm deal to be used for the wider public good rather than the royal family. King Charles has asked for the profits from 6 new offshore wind farms being developed on Crown Estate land to be redirected to those struggling the most. It comes after His Majesty highlighted the anxiety and hardship of the cost of living crisis in his Christmas message. Those are your top stories. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Farage.
Good evening. I don't know what it is about governments, but they have these big intellectual ideas they try and sell to us, and very often we don't really understand what they're talking about. David Cameron talked about the big society. I'm still 12 or 13 years on, absolutely none the wiser as to what was being discussed at all. And one of the big ones, of course, now, that's after the Northern Powerhouse. We had years of a Northern Powerhouse. Once again, I'm still none the wiser. Now we have levelling up. I've no idea what it really means. I think what it means is taxpayers' cash being sort of sprayed around the country, probably to very little effect. I don't know. But tell me, do you understand what levelling up actually means? Give me your thoughts, Farage at gbnews.uk. Well, hopefully, I've got a chap with me tonight who can explain what levelling up is. He's the North East Somerset Member of Parliament, former Business Secretary. We're very pleased to have Jacob Rees-Mogg here in the studio with us.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure to be here.
Jacob is a well-educated man. Can you please tell us what levelling up is?
Yes, I will try. The point of it is to get away from the distortions we have in the UK economy. So a lot of the wealth of the UK economy is based in London and the South East, and that is one of the richest parts of the world. You then move away from London and you find that we've got parts of the country that have GDP per capita that is much more lowly ranked. And what do you do to change that? Well, it's things like building roads. It's making sure that people are connected. It's putting out super fast broadband so that people can do business in the countryside as well as in cities. Levelling up is ensuring that a fair share of taxpayers' cash goes to other parts of the country.
OK, well, if that's the case then, why is the South East getting so much money?
Because there are bits of the South East that aren't well connected as well. My own constituency is a very good example of this. I have some parts of North East Somerset that are very successful and very prosperous. But some of the areas that tend to have been the old mining areas, and people forget Somerset had a strong coal mining tradition, have been left behind. And giving them some help, some support to compete with areas that are only a few miles away is something that it's important to do.
All right.
And there was a great distortion. I would say many problems in this country come from Treasury analytics, but that's perhaps a different discussion. The Treasury spent money dependent upon what it saw as the return on investment. Now, you'd say that was normally very sensible, but that meant your return was always greater in London and the South East, because London and the South East was richer to start with. And so there was a change in the Green Book to make it easier to have capital expenditure, taxpayers' money, of course, outside.
Well, that's all well and good, Jacob. You know, government putting a bit of money here, a bit of money there, building a road, I get it. However, you and I both know that actually generally, for all of us to become richer in this country, better off in this country, it needs success in the private sector. It's the private sector that generates wealth, that generates taxes, without which we can't have a health service or anything else. Now, I've been very critical of much of this government's economic policy, and overnight we see a really coruscating article from James Dyson, basically saying that the government's economics is short-sighted. He even uses the word stupid. He says you cannot just go on taxing private companies without people leaving the country. The Conservative Party we are now witnessing, under a Conservative government, a brain drain we haven't seen since the 1970s. What is going on?
Well, we're at the highest tax rate for 70 years. Sir James Dyson is an absolutely brilliant man. Completely understands what he's talking about, understands his business, and has made a huge success of investing in this country.
So is he right?
And one should listen very carefully to what he says. I think we have got too big a state, full stop. We spend too much money, and to pay for that, we tax too highly. And we need to be more realistic about this. We need to cut expenditure. We need to look at what we're spending money on. We need to root out wasteful expenditure. But it's more than that. We've got to work out what is the state trying to do. And it seems to me it tries to do too much. And the only way to get to lower taxation is if the state tries to do less and does what it does do better.
But that's the bizarre thing. We've now had a Conservative government, albeit in coalition for the first few years. Now, since 2010, we've seen a bigger expansion of the state under the Conservatives than we did in the previous decade under Labour. And when for a millisecond a Conservative Chancellor of the Exchequer tries to reduce the size of the state by a pretty modest 0.5%, everyone goes crazy and they get sacked. I mean, this is really my point to you. The Conservative Party and the Labour Party are now virtually indistinguishable on these big philosophical principles, such as the size of a state, whatever your own personal view may be.
I wouldn't go quite as far as that. You see that Sir Keir Starmer wants to, I think he wants to nationalise the energy industry, and he wants to nationalise GPs. So there is still red in tooth and claw socialism within the Labour Party. You may say there isn't enough blue in tooth and claw conservatism within the Conservative Party. Well, I think you're a bit unfair,
but not wholly.
But not wholly unfair. No, I think partly circumstances one goes through it. There was the coalition to begin with. Now, that really hobbled us because the Lib Dems stopped us doing the most conservative things that we would have done. Then we have very, very small majorities. So Theresa May, even if she'd wanted to do bold things, which is slightly moot point, didn't have a majority to get them through. Then Boris wins a large majority and is immediately hit by COVID, which even I thought justified an increase in state expenditure. I thought we had to ensure that businesses could survive, because if suddenly you go from selling 100 dinners an evening to 0, you are out of business.
But if we hadn't locked down, if we'd done what Sweden did and what Ron DeSantis did in Florida, things would have been very different.
That's very interesting. I was actually having lunch with somebody who is Swedish, and he was saying to me that the Swedish restaurants were still empty because everyone was told, don't go out. It was legal to go out, but people self-regulated.
Well, I can promise you that in Florida, and I was in Florida during lockdown, and
I happen to agree with you. I think we need, the real thing the COVID inquiry should do is to look at whether lockdown was proportionate, because I think it wasn't. Now, I fully bought into the first lockdown. I wasn't raising questions about it at that point. But lots of people were raising questions later on.
Yeah.
And if the inquiry doesn't look at that, it will be pointless. If it just looks at should we have locked down earlier, it will be really silly.
No, I agree, and and there also needs to be an open debate around the vaccine. There are a significant number of people concerned about vaccine harms, and I'm not getting into the wild conspiracy theories, but I do think a proper open debate on that is justified.
Well, I tend to think that if you have an open debate, it reassures people. That the thing that makes people most nervous is if you're not willing to discuss it, and if you try and shut down debate. Having said that, I think what one of my parliamentary colleagues said was deeply irresponsible and just went...
Well, he used a word...
He went off the reservation in what he
the
said.
word that Bridgen used, and he said it was from an Israeli doctor, but the word, quite frankly, any reference to the Holocaust in any context isn't helpful, and I totally get that. Jacob, you were a high-profile, well-known political figure. You've held very senior office. You're now on the back benches. What can Jacob Rees-Mogg do as a backbencher that he couldn't do as a minister?
Probably rather more in some ways than as a minister. I can come talk to you much more easily, which is great, that you don't have very good briefings, it has to be said, but very detailed briefings as to what you're allowed to say and what you're not meant to say, which I wasn't necessarily the best at following, but I tried quite hard. You can be involved in the public debate again, whereas when you're a minister, you're limited very much to your specific area. And in government, I found it was much easier to stop things than to make things happen. It's easier to block than to push forward. And from the outside, you can be a much more open part of the political debate. You're much freer to speak.
Well, that's a very good thing. So, Nicola Sturgeon's law, vetoed by Sunak, has he got this one right?
Yes, he has. He's got it right on the narrow legal constitutional ground, that it conflicts with a UK-wide Act of Parliament.
Yes.
And Lord Hope has come out and said that the chance of a successful legal challenge is very remote. But it's also right on the basis that that was a very bad law and has all sorts of risks within it that were not being properly considered.
He didn't say that, did he?
No, he didn't say that.
No.
I'm saying that.
No,
but I'm a backbencher, so I'm now allowed to say these things.
Well, already we're getting... You're free to speak. No, that's good. There was a piece written by Cheryl Jacobs in yesterday's Daily Telegraph, and it was written by somebody who was a passionate Brexiteer who is bitterly disappointed with what has not been delivered since that general election at the end of 2019. Now, we do have an important piece of legislation going through the Commons at the moment. You were very involved in this from the early days. So are we going to be successful? Are we going to scrap thousands of EU laws?
Yes, I mean, assuming the House of Lords doesn't try to block it, and I think they won't, because it got through the House of Commons with large majorities, tiny rebellion. 4 Tory MPs voted for one amendment.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of support in the Commons. It's a clear consequence of Brexit. It has strong arguments for it on a technical basis in terms of tidying up the statute book, which is important. And it is an important restoration of the common law for our way of doing things. And Cheryl Jacobs is a very good columnist and is always interesting, but I think she was much too gloomy. But Brexit is a means to an end in the end. That what are we trying to do? We're trying to govern ourselves. And you and I think that if we govern ourselves, we will do it better, because it gives us an opportunity to have lower taxes, to be more deregulatory, to have an immigration policy that suits us, and so on. There is always the risk with Brexit that the electorate decides to elect a left-wing government that doesn't want these benefits. But we accept that and indeed embrace that because we believe in democracy as being fundamentally more important. It's actually Tony Benn's thing that he would rather have a bad parliament than a good king, because ultimately a good king will fail.
You can sack the parliament, and we couldn't sack the European Commission. I get that, but do you understand the anger and frustration that Britain's small businessmen and women are feeling, that the fishing community are feeling? They're saying, hey, we back this thing. We haven't as yet felt any benefit at all.
And we should do more. We should be punchier about what we're doing to help small businesses. For example, I think it's a pity we haven't taken this, particularly help small businesses, but help consumers, taking 5% VAT off fuel. I think we should be doing things...
A Brexit benefit would have been clear.
A Brexit benefit.
So why does a Conservative Party with an 80-seat majority on the back of Brexit not do these things?
There is, partly it's been working through what can be done. Partly the legislative process takes longer than you might like. Partly some of these things are happening. So there is a bill before Parliament to deal with financial services. Solvency II will be dealt with. There's the gene editing bill, which is very important. And you know, this hasn't been much picked up, but you'll like this. We have saved £191 billion. Forget the 350 million a week, £191 billion by not being part of the COVID rescue package of over €2 trillion.
Well, do you know what?
That is a success.
Well, I wish that was being shouted rather more loudly. I genuinely do.
I put it in an article in the Telegraph, and I mentioned it in the House of Commons.
I know,
so I'm doing my bit.
No, you are,
but,
and you also.
Now you can do
and
it
you
too.
also said that if the civil service go on strike on the 1st of February, wouldn't even
Nobody would
notice because they're all working from home.
Well, I love this idea that they're going to be standing outside their own house with a thing saying "Do not cross its picket line." So will they be able to go into their house for supper?
Jacob, a pleasure. We look forward to you being a very outspoken campaigning backbencher. Now, that's enough from Jacob, but I'm going to tell you something about Jacob. You see, there's been a bit of gossip going around, indeed, the Express Online have run an article today saying Jacob Rees-Mogg, Brexit champion, is gearing up to launch his own TV show on GB News. Now, I won't embarrass Jacob by asking him whether this rumour is true or not, because not long ago he was a minister, and the correct period of time has not elapsed before he's allowed to say any other ventures he's going to move on to. I just hope that we'll be seeing a lot more of Jacob Rees-Mogg on GB News. I really hope the rumours are true. In a moment, we'll discuss the ULEZ extension. Prime Minister Sunak weighing into the debate yesterday, and various boroughs on the outskirts of London beginning to fight Khan on it. But is ULEZ the right thing to do or not?
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory.
twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
So, after Jacob Rees-Mogg, do you now really understand what levelling up is? Well, some of your reactions coming in. David says, it's all about trying to get his mates re-elected by spending our money. I'd rather he cut fuel taxes. Well, interestingly, there are some that say that the levelling up money that's being spent is being spent in areas that the Conservatives won in 2019 and would quite like to hold on to. I can't believe our politics is that cynical, can you? Another viewer says, no, I ain't got a Scooby-Doo what it means. Sounds like something a landscape gardener would say. Some of these are funny. Piper says, nope, seems like a buzzword like build back better. Adrian says no. And John Joe says, and he's right here, he says £2 billion is a lot of money, but not for levelling up, in which case it's a deeply unserious amount of money. And actually, truth is, a couple of £1 billion sprayed around the country, frankly, makes almost no difference at all. We've got to get growth from the private sector. Now, ULEZ. I've been talking a bit about the extension of ULEZ. It goes out to the very limits of Greater London at the end of August this year. It's something Sadiq Khan is very, very keen to do. And for the first time, and this is interesting, because in the past Khan had said that the Transport Secretary was comfortable about the ULEZ extension, i.e. a Conservative Transport Secretary, though there have been so many it's not worth even naming any individual one. But yesterday, when questioned on this is what Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, had to say.
Well, my honourable friend has rightly pointed out that transport in London is devolved to the Labour Mayor of London, and it is disappointing that the Mayor, backed by the Leader of the Opposition, is choosing not to listen to the public, expanding the zone against the overwhelming views of residents and businesses. I urge the Mayor to properly reconsider and respond to these serious concerns. The Labour Mayor is imposing this tax on a public which does not want it. He's right to highlight that. Expanding this zone is not something that communities want, and I look forward to working with him to urge the Mayor to properly consider and respond to all these views and stop this unfair tax.
Well, joining me to discuss all of that is Oliver Lord, head of the Clean Cities campaign in the United Kingdom. The big point the Prime Minister was making there yesterday is this is not wanted or desired by the boroughs on the outer ring of the London donut. Doesn't the PM have a point?
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's getting quite political argy-bargy now, I think, because obviously it's getting into a different heartland of London that is up against the Mayor. But I think the Mayor's absolutely right to be expanding this because of the impact that air pollution is having on people's health. And
well, that's all well and good. But if you live where I live, on top of the North Downs, literally on the border of Kent, and what is now, it wasn't until the 1960s, but is now Greater London, it is a rural area. There are narrow roads where only one car can go down. There are no issues. I mean, you know, Khan talks about air pollution, climate change and congestion. We have no congestion. We have almost no air pollution whatsoever. I get it in the centre of London, but even the expansion of ULEZ that came out to the north and south circulars. I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it, that Imperial College's own study, you know, they say changes in air pollution varied quite significantly since 2019. At some sites, pollution actually worsened. So a lot of this has to do with wind direction, prevailing winds. I mean, do you honestly think, and I'm asking, I really want an honest answer to this, do you honestly think that expanding out to the rural edges of some of these boroughs is going to make any difference at all?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the city is full of horrible diesel fumes, and that's what we've got to get rid of. The city. That's what our campaign's all about. We've got this vision to actually eventually phase out the combustion engine in cities, and that's public health policy. Really,
Well, I'll come to that, but I mean, for now, the point is that this will rake in an estimated £385,000 a day. Mm-hmm. Khan has said poor people don't drive. That is utter rubbish, because if you live out in the outer reaches of the boroughs all around London, if you haven't got a car, you're knackered, frankly. So disproportionately, those on lower incomes, low fixed incomes, whatever it is, are spending a lot on cars. I mean, I've got a friend of mine. It's going to cost her £12.50 to go and buy the newspapers every day. She can't afford a new car that's ULEZ compliant. It seems to me this is going to hit the poor.
Well, I mean, part of the issue that we're facing is people are trapped in these car-dependent lifestyles, right? And when you look at the statistics, actually a quarter of all car journeys in England are under 2 miles. So I think the question here is whether we actually have to use the car all the time. So if you're in London, for example, half of all car trips could actually be cycled in around 10 minutes, which is one example of the change that we need to see.
I understand the logic of the argument about fumes in central, built-up, busy London. What I'm saying is ULEZ extension is going to bring no environmental benefit whatsoever and hurt the poor, and has no democratic support. And we've learned this week that Khan literally binned 5,200 objections that were put into this, and he ruled them invalid. I mean, there is no level at which this has genuine democratic support, and we are beginning to see some real pushback to this. We've got Hillingdon, we've got Bexley, we've got Bromley, and they're questioning the legal legitimacy of TfL, Transport for London, to put these cameras up. Sutton, interestingly, Lib Dem controlled. By the way, folks, the Lib Dems voted for the ULEZ extension in the Assembly, but now they're just saying we're not going to have this at all.
I was quite flummoxed by that one, to be honest. I mean, with those boroughs that you just mentioned...
What I'm saying to you is this. There has not been a proper democratic engagement with the people who would be directly affected by this. And it isn't just those that live on the edge, it's businesses. They could be in Hertfordshire, anywhere, Essex, anywhere around London. Businesses with vans. Again, you're taxing business. You're not going to stop. I mean, you're not going to stop car journeys doing this. And it has no. My point to you, really, Oliver, is it has no democratic mandate.
Well, I don't think that's true, because there's just been a massive public consultation on it. I mean, the campaign group that you talked about and this whole argy-bargy
public
about
consultation. So why ditch 5,200 objections?
So it didn't just ditch that. It's not actually been ditched. They've been treated as a campaign response. And actually, there was 4 other campaigns that aren't mentioned by Fair Fuel who are actually for the ULEZ expansion, and they were also treated as campaign responses. So I think going back to my
I don't know whether you're right on that, but I take what you say.
Yeah.
Oliver, isn't the real point here, and you touched on it earlier, that ultimately we're seeing this in London. We've now got a pricing scheme in the centre of Birmingham. We've got Oxford and Canterbury who want to stop us driving out of the parts of the city we live in, 15-minute rules and all the rest of it. Ultimately, you guys want road charging as a way of stopping us using cars.
Ultimately, the vision that we have is fewer combustion engines in the city, because they're actually poisoning people. They're actually leading to dementia, cancer. They're shortening people's lives. They're shortening the lungs of children. That's what we want to get rid of. This is a bit like going back in the days when people were debating smoking in public places. There was loads of businesses who were like, oh, my pub's going to close down, my business is going to close down.
And they have. Thousands of them.
I disagree
Thousands
with that.
of them. But that's a separate issue. Look, I get the argument, the Clean Air Act in the 1950s made London a more livable place. I would not want to grow up, next to a major arterial route coming out of the centre of London.
And people are right now.
I get that, I understand that. But frankly, there is no viable alternative on a large scale to the combustion engine as there is yet.
Not on a large scale, but we're not saying let's get rid of it overnight. What this scheme is saying, let's get rid of the oldest, most polluting cars. And actually, if there's scrappage money there...
Oliver Lord, I don't doubt your sincerity for one moment in terms of what you want to try to achieve. And I don't disagree with the basic aims. I just think the ULEZ extension is impractical, wrong, and will hurt the poor. Don't like that one little bit. We're going to take a break, and in a moment, I'll tell you what Tony Blair has got planned for all of us.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice, We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, man.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Another exclusive story from Mark White, our Home Affairs editor. We've been joining immigration enforcement officials on a raid. Have a look at what happened.
We're on board with immigration officers in South East London as they prepare to raid several businesses suspected of employing illegal immigrants. Arriving at this skip hire firm, these officers have to move fast if they're to stop their suspects disappearing. Searching all the possible hiding places as they go. Among those they're looking for, at least 2 Albanians. Immigration enforcement officers believe one of the men has run off.
Yeah, have you got a picture of it?
The other is behind the wheel of this vehicle, but a quick check reveals he has a proper work visa. Elsewhere, the rest of the workforce have gathered in this porta-cabin as immigration officers check their status.
We're going to take you into this room and just speak to you in here, yeah?
After speaking to this Romanian, he was placed under arrest on suspicion of working in the UK without a proper visa. The senior immigration enforcement officer here told us they've now been issued with new guidance, allowing for the arrest of EU nationals living and working here illegally.
Well, great work there from Mark White. So there you have EU citizens, but without visas to work in the United Kingdom, being arrested for working illegally. Good. The government are beginning to do their job. The question now is, will they be deported? We're going to follow this case very, very closely. Quick What the Farage moment. You may think we've got a strike problem here in this country. The French do this so much better than us. A day of national strikes in France, and yes, it's school teachers, and it's all sorts of people, nurses, you name it. And the French, being French, are out marching through Paris in their tens of thousands, letting off smoke bombs. Why is it happening? Because Macron wants to increase the age of retirement from 62 to 64. I'm afraid in the end, France has to get into the modern world. Davos is, of course, going on at the moment, and the great Tony Blair is at Davos. He is rumoured to want now to take over from Klaus Schwab as the boss of it. Here were some words of advice from Tony Blair today.
In the end, you need the data. You need to know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been. Some of the vaccines that will come on down the line will be multiple. There'll be multiple shots. So you've got to have, for reasons to do with the healthcare more generally, but certainly for a pandemic or for vaccines, you've got to have a proper digital infrastructure. And many countries don't have that. In fact, most countries don't have that.
So there he is, there's Tony Blair. He wants us to have multiple shots and for all of it to be digitised so the state knows exactly what our status is. Pure evil is all I can say. One little happy note. The Sun today revealed that bubbly could be up to 50p cheaper as a result of those regulations that Jacob Rees-Mogg talked about disappearing. 50p off a bottle of bubbly because rules on foil and corks are going to change. And one final little thought. The cartoonist Matt from the Daily Telegraph is utterly brilliant, and I just so love his cartoon today, where father says to son in Glasgow, you can't just switch from being a Celtic supporter to a Rangers supporter, son. 16 is too young to make such a decision. Absolutely, completely and utterly brilliant. In a moment, we're going to be joined by Ian Holloway. He's a man who took 2 teams up into the Premier League, and he's never afraid of being outspoken. I'm looking forward to talking pies with him in just a moment.
Tomorrow on Mark Dolan Tonight, in a world exclusive, Katie Price joins us live to talk fame, love, money, plastic surgery and her hopes for the future.
Get tuned in tomorrow for GB News. I'm meeting up with my old mate, Mark Dolan. It's been ages since I've done an interview with him.
That's Katie Price on Mark Dolan Tonight, tomorrow on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Davos and UK. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Before I introduce my guest to you, here he is, just a couple of years back, in the dressing room at Crystal Palace. It may give you something of his character to have a look at these shots.
Talk to me, Dave. 2 goals today. Hey, Dave, talk to me, bro. I've got nothing to say, mate. Nothing to say. That's going Wembley, mate. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Rambo. What did I say to you? What did I say to you? Oh my God!
Well, for those listening on radio, Ian Holloway, who was the manager of Crystal Palace at the time, was dancing around the locker room. Ian, welcome.
Thank you, Nigel.
Talking Pints, very good.
Lovely to
see you. No, thank you. Now, professional footballer, 400 games.
Oh, that's a nice pint.
Good, excellent.
Nice.
400 games for Bristol Rovers. You played for other clubs as well. This was it from boyhood, wasn't it? You wanted to be a footballer.
Ever since I can remember, I told everybody I want to be a footballer, and I was the youngest of 3 children. My brother John's 9 years older than me, my sister Sue's 6 years older than me, and I was, being the youngest, I had mum's attention and I wanted dad's as well, so being a crafty little devil, I managed to do it. But he said some wonderful things, and the most important thing was, if you don't make it, let it be through lack of ability rather than lack of effort, and as long as you try hard, you won't fail, son. So
that's a big lesson in life for a lot of young people, I think, these days. A lot of young people now think there are shortcuts. There aren't really, are there?
Not at all, no. You just got to work hard at whatever you do. Even the best tennis players, the best football players, the best businessmen, they work so hard.
Yeah, they blooming well do.
Yeah.
But it's as a manager that you've become this national, and at times, Ian, it's got to be said, very controversial thing.
Yeah, FIFA and UEFA didn't like me at times.
No, we're going to come to that. Don't worry. We're going to come to that. Don't worry. I mean, I'm just thinking about it. You know, there are lots of jobs in life that have risk. Lots of jobs. I mean, this job I'm doing now, I can say something incredibly stupid and you're gone. I mean, but actually, one of the most precarious jobs in this country is being the manager of a top football club. I mean, you've managed quite a few clubs over the years, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been around a bit, you know, and to be honest, every one of them was a total privilege to be the boss of something for however many supporters you've got is quite an honour, and I was very respectful about that, and I wanted my team to try and do what my dad told me all those years ago, was work hard. Yep. Because how would a football supporter play if they were wearing that club shirt? They would
for their lives
never give in.
They
this
give
is
it
my
everything.
whole point.
Yeah.
So it was a character trait in me, really. And at the moment, I'm having the pleasure of going around doing a documentary on other managers and why we keep going back. It's like being a vampire. You can't help it. You got it. But you try and affect people, and I believe that's similar to what you've tried to do in your life. And you know, my daughters are deaf, and our lives dovetail, so you'll understand what I'm talking about.
But as a football manager, getting sacked is part of the job, isn't it? I mean, it happens. How have you coped with that? How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, it's bruising, to say the least. It is something that really, really hurts, because you move your family and you take your wife there, and she's got no reason to be there apart from you and your selfish job, and you know, and she wants you to do the best you can. But, you know, I've moved her 48 times.
48 times?
Yeah,
You've been with Kim all these years?
All these, yeah. We've been married 34 years.
Yep. And 48 moves?
Yes, yeah. And what, if I can put it into people's mind, what she said to me once, just before I went into a different job, she said, please don't become the result this time. I don't know if I can stand it. And football supporters will understand what I'm saying. Because you do it every week, don't you? If your team wins, you're happy. If they don't, you know.
But you've had some, I mean, let's face it, you know, you took Blackpool up to the Premiership, which they couldn't believe. You took Palace, which is a club that our family have been supporting for many, many years. Not many men have taken two teams up to the Premiership. That's got to feel pretty special.
Yeah, nobody else from where I come from. So I'm a one-off, a bit Tigger, really. Top's made out of rubber, bottom's made out of spring. You know? And, you know, obviously everywhere I go, I take it a little bit personally, you know, where I'm from, and I should be drinking cider and all that. But, mate, I've been so lucky and so proud of the people that have worked with me. That's the thing. They haven't worked for me. They work with me to try and make an environment that is fearless, and we're going to go and try and do our best. And the thing, financially, it's been very successful, some of the things I've done.
Yeah, no. And you said with Blackpool going up to the Premiership, outside your kids being born, it was kind of the best day of your life.
Yeah, I will never forget. Time stood still. And we had a horseshoe of the Tangerine down there, and I'm up on the balcony, and our lads are receiving the trophy, and I thought, I can't believe this. And I swear to you, it was, life just stood still. I thought of all the people I've loved who are gone, my father, a big influence. And it was just totally incredible, you know?
Fantastic.
Because that's in history. People can't take that away.
They can't take it away from you. You've done it with two clubs. They can never take it away from you. Now, personal life, Ian, you've had some difficulties, some profound deafness with three of your children, sort of genetically inherited trait. Your wife, of course, horrendous battle, which she overcame with cancer. So you've had a lot of challenges. How do you deal, how does a deaf child get the chance to fulfil their potential in life?
Well, first off, they're lucky to have a wonderful mother. My wife, she handled non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. They said she had a 1 in 3 chance of surviving. Yeah. They tried a new drug on her quite a while ago now, and it worked to treat. They said you can't have children, probably won't be able to have children, and we had 4, 3 of them profoundly deaf. So she is the secret to all of this, my Kim, and I love her to bits. But it was really tough. We had to move houses nearly 4 times to try and get into obviously it's a very, how can I say it, very small numbers of deaf children are born deaf, and as profoundly deaf as my daughters. So their needs were very specialised. So they're a minority group, but we had to find the schools and we had to fight for it. So I've been lucky that I could afford to move, but I've had to fight authorities to get my daughters what I believed they needed. And I believe that because in Bristol, I was very lucky to have a wonderful school that my daughters first went to. We were taught a visual language. There's 3 different ways that you do that visual language. You do BSL, British Sign Language, you do sign-supported English, and you do English. So my daughters knew in that wonderful school that each time of the day they were being taught the differences. So, wow, we went to Reading and they took it away from us. It was just oral. So my daughters just got a bit like that wonderful girl who won Come Dancing. Yeah. When music stopped, we were all crying because that's what it means. And we've had a fight, and do you know, I had nothing to worry about. All my daughters work now. They're all mums, and it was a fight, and it was something I was worried about, but I didn't need to.
No, but it's a good story. Now, back to your professional life. You are known as being somewhat outspoken. Holloway rants. You see, this is what he's well known for. We're going to show you one.
I'm not going to have one with you.
We're going to show you one of them. This is when the absolutely crackpot decision had been announced by FIFA that the World Cup would not be played, as it traditionally is, in the summer, but would be a winter World Cup in Qatar. And this is how Holloway reacted to it all.
Seriously, it has gone crazy. I think the world has gone completely on its head. Happy Christmas. You wait till I get home, I'm going to tell my turkeys that don't worry, It ain't Christmas, we're moving it. It's all right, you got some respite, you know. Oh, I've had a word with FIFA and we're going to move Christmas. It's no problem. Fantastic.
Well, you were pretty upfront there about your views on FIFA and how what a nonsense it was.
Nigel, I can't help myself.
No, you
can't.
I
am not diplomatic, and you've been known to be a bit like that yourself, haven't you? You're sort of out there. No, you have been out there.
I get it. Yeah, but this, I mean, you were a bit of a dream, weren't you, for the press, really, with these press conferences, and they'd throw a question at you and you would just simply answer it.
Well, to be honest, I like people to know where they stand with me, you know, and whether they like that or not, I don't know. It's something that I was brought up to do. And my dad always said, son, you're better off letting people know what you feel, and if they don't like it, that's tough, as long as you've said how you feel. And some people can't do that. So if you think they're being bullied, stand up for them at school. And so I did one day, and someone clocked me one, and Dad went, what happened? And I went, well, I stood up for something. He went, well done, son. You know?
Well, you've always stood up for what you believe in, and you've overcome some great challenges with your wife's health, with your daughters. As I say, you've taken 2 clubs up to the Premier League.
Getting all emotional here, aren't I?
And, well, all I can say is that what absolute pleasure to have you on Talk.
And good luck to your son. I would love to meet him as well.
Thank you. Yeah, he loves Palace. We've got a few seconds left on the show. It's time for Farage the Farage. You've sent your questions in. I have no idea what they are. Here goes. Trevor asks, if civil servants go on strike, will they picket their own homes? This is what Jacob was saying earlier. I mean, he did write a very funny column on this, saying if the civil service go on strike, who will notice? And of course, if you remember, at the time that he was minister, he was going around Whitehall offices that were empty, leaving little notes saying, sorry, I missed you. So Jacob, another person who does actually, whether you love him or hate him, stands up and says what he genuinely believes, which I think is a good thing in society. Richard asks, are we heading for a 100% totally cashless society within a decade? Richard, when you see Tony Blair there at Davos saying, we've all got to have lots more shots, lots more injections, and that all of us must be put onto a computer system so that governments know exactly what our health status is. Don't think that people like Blair don't want to do that with money as well. They would love to have a central bank digital currency to monitor us, to control us at all times. And we must not let it happen. Cash is king. I want it to remain that way. Well, thank you, everybody. That's me done for this week. I'm back with you on Monday evening at 7 o'clock. I've enjoyed the week. I hope you have too. We've had a great range of guests. Please have a great weekend. And I will now hand you over to the very capable Laurence Fox.
Hi, thanks, Nigel. Great show. Tonight we will be talking about the climate emergency, ding dong, Jacinda's gone, and why Kelvin McKenzie and what he thinks about the strikers. But first, the weather.
Good evening, I'm Alex.